All right, I'm gonna make an announcement over on the original Big Discussions 76 channel. Then I'll play the intro. I'm gonna make an announcement. That was feedback from YouTube. So I'm gonna make an announcement over on the original Big Discussions 76 channel, and then I'm gonna play the intro, and then I will get started. Hopefully, I'll wrap this up in about an hour, unless someone wants to come on and talk with me about this. So let me make this announcement. I'm going to give it a like. This is a much more sturdy table than the one that I have at home. As you can see, I'm not in my usual spot. But I'm going to play the intro, and then we'll get started. What's going on, Extended Clips? Thank you always for being here and for your support. I'll see you guys on the other side. All right, everyone. Those of you watching live and those of you watching on the playback, I see Toya's son is here. Extended Clips is here. Thank you both for being here. If other folks come in, thank you for being here as well in advance. If not, then we'll just rock out with the group we have, and folks can watch it on the playback if they see fit. So, hey, Happy New Year, everyone. Things have been pretty quiet over here on this channel. I think the last offering I had here was the review of Spider-Man 3 that I did with Kareem. We both loved it. If you haven't seen that, please give it a view. And if you haven't seen the movie, if you haven't seen our review yet, please give it a view. But if you haven't seen the movie yet, I highly recommend it, but I would be careful right now about going out to the theater to see it with the Omicron floating around. So, but for this particular offering, I wanted to read one of my pieces. I think Extended Clips and Toya, you guys know that I'm for the last part of my life, I want to write. And in this year, I want to publish my book and I want to continue to sell myself as a writer. So you're going to see more of my writings. And so media, so this channel is dedicated to media. As you know, media could be music, it could be books, it could be poetry, it could be anything. And in that introduction, you saw clips from Wu-Tang. We saw images from Wu-Tang and American Saga. You saw images from the Avengers, Batman, 300, our kind of people. Those are all movies and TV shows. And you heard the music playing underneath that, but everything pretty much starts with an idea and everything pretty much starts with writing. So someone had to compose that music, someone had to compose the scripts and the stories and the plots for those movies and those TV shows. So everything pretty much starts with writing. So in the coming year, you're going to see me put more of my writings out there. Speaking of which, I think Toya and Extended Clips know that I have a writer's blog, but I'm also starting a newsletter, and I think you two have signed up. If you're watching this and you haven't signed up, please consider signing up for the Big Words LLC newsletter, because I have 2 blogs and 4 channels and a book project, and I think the newsletter will be a good way to get my messaging out there in a concise way for those who are interested in it. Because Google actually, if you're in the blogging world, Google took away a feature from a feed burner where people could subscribe to your blog. So this is my newsletter. The link is in the description box below. Please sign up for it and join me on the next part of my writing journey. So that's the newsletter. I want to move along here and not stretch this out too long. But my book project, and I have another promotional essay on the way. So that's going to come out in the next 1 or 2 weeks. It's called The Engineers, a Western New York Basketball Story. And I decided over the holiday that I'm going to use this channel and I'm going to use the sports channel to really, really promote this. I think over here, I'm going to talk about the book more so from the literary sense. And as a writer over on the sports channel, Big Discussions 76 Sports, I'm going to talk about more of the nuanced sports aspects of the book. Because if anyone who's played sports, I don't know if you guys have played sports, but there's just so many aspects that go into being an athlete and being a part of a team and working to win a championship, whatever level you're at. So over here, I'm going to talk about it more from a literary viewpoint, and then over on the sports channel, I'm going to talk about the book from more of a athletics standpoint. So now that that's out of the way, tonight's this essay, where did this all come from? Oh, so guys, as you can see, I'm not in my usual spot. I'm in a nice, cozy location out in Eastern Maryland in the woods. We have a good signal here now, so I can stream from here now with confidence. I have my Scully on because it's a little cool, and I've got the scarf, so I'm trying to stay warm. But I'm out in a cabin presenting some of my writing. So where did this one come from? Okay, this is a humorous essay. So every writer has their style, and part of my style is humor. I have a really wry sense of humor, as a teacher told me in a workshop a couple of years ago. I like to tell real life stories. Shout out to Toya. Toya did two really good streams the last 2 weeks, discussing her and her mom going on Rolanda a couple of years ago. So I like real life stories, and many of my stories are influenced by relatives, and in this instance, uh, my parents. So this has my father's fingerprints all over it, and he actually inspired this essay, and you're going to see why shortly. And as you can see, the background of this, and I actually changed out the thumbnail to Mr. Jones from Friday. Those of you who are familiar with Friday know that John Witherspoon, the late John Witherspoon, may he rest in power, he played Craig's father, hence Craig's dad, Mr. Jones. And in a very iconic scene in the beginning of the movie, Craig's in the kitchen looking for food, foraging for food, and he closes the refrigerator door, and Mr. Jones is there doing his, every time I come in the kitchen, you're here, eating up all the hog maws, eating up all the, he runs down this whole list of food that Craig's eating up, and he says, I want to eat them, I want to eat some of them hog maws. I want to eat some of those pig's feet. So pork, as you'll see, and as most of you know, in the Ados tribe in Black America, pork is a big deal. Whether you eat it or whether you don't, pork is a big deal. So it's funny that my father has his fingerprints all over this. A lot of father-son dynamics regarding pork have been in the media. I just described one. Another one that I thought about leading up to the stream was this one. For those of you who have seen Boys in the Hood, this is an iconic scene from Boys in the Hood early on in the movie, where we just see Trey becoming a teen, even though Cuba Gooding Jr. doesn't look like a teen there. But he's sitting there. He's sitting there with his father, Furious Styles. Doughboy just got out of prison, and they threw a barbecue for him. And Trey brings home a barbecue plate for his father, Furious. And the question Furious asks Trey is, "Now I know you didn't bring me no swine, So in other words, I know you didn't bring me any pork, you know." And Trey says, "No, no, I know you don't like that, but I'm saying this to say that in our community, pork, whether you eat it or whether you don't, is a very, very big deal, and it's a very, it's absolutely a discussion point. Pork, yeah, pork is always front and center, um, all over the place. So, oh boy, let me see if that's all folks offered because of their greed. What can you do? Why always blame the eater instead of the givers? Okay. Um, Trying to keep a straight face here. Extended clips and Toya. Let me see if you guys are wrenched for this. Toya's wrenched. Extended clips. Let me give you a wrench. Okay. Give me 1 second here. Why can't I? Oh, I can't give you a wrench because I'm still over on my original channel. Give me a second. Extended clips. So I'm going to give you a wrench. If you're new coming in, please hit the like button. If anyone wants to, I don't have a super chat over here. and it'll be a while before I get a super chat over here. So if anyone wants to make a donation to the channel, my Cash App and PayPal are right here. Okay. If you're new coming in, please hit that like button, get the likes up. Okay, so extended clips, I'm going to give you a wrench. Should have done this a while ago. So extended clips, you are now a moderator. Okay. Toya, extended clips. If you see anyone in the chat acting up or acting strange or unusual, you can do with them as you please. Let's see. Okay. So this essay. Let me get to this essay. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. So if you see anyone acting strange in the chat, feel free to exile them. Okay. So this essay is entitled "Reflections on the Other White Meat: Dad's Pork Stories and Becoming What You Eat." I didn't realize when I first wrote this that rhymed, but it rhymes. So my father very much inspired this. And Toya, I'm sure whatever you write and you compose, I'm sure your mother inspires some of your work as well. So the body of this essay is going to involve my father, though when I was finishing it up, from my, during my creative process, I just added more to the front. So it has an introduction and it has a body and an ending. But I wrote this up to be funny. So here we go. We're about 18 minutes in. All right. So as you can see right there, John Witherspoon, rest in power. Iconic lines. I want to eat some of those hog maws. I want to eat some of those pig feet. Okay. And it's funny because I didn't grow up eating this stuff as I'll read, but I always thought it was hog mogs. I thought it rhymed, but it's hog maws. I want to eat some of those hog maws. I want to eat some of those pig feet. And by the way, the writing in Friday, especially the first one, it was brilliant. Ice Cube really has his finger on the pulse of the Eidos tribe. And it was a funny movie, but the writing and the ideas that Ice Cube came up with for that were brilliant. So, an introduction to pork, the other white meat. The genus and species for the pig whose meat ends up on our dinner tables is Sus linnaeus. So as a scientist, every species has a genus name and a species name. So the pig is called Sus linnaeus. And you guys know what this guy looks like. That's Sus linnaeus. As a scientist, I figured it wouldn't hurt to add the scientific name of the pig to the opening of this piece. It's classified as an omnivore, which means it eats both animal and plant matter itself. The meat I refer to in the opening sentence is the other white meat, pork. I've actually never considered pork to be in the company of poultry, but a commercial from earlier this century described it as such. Throughout my life, the other white meat has stirred numerous emotions in those around me and has frequently been a discussion piece. With Thanksgiving 2021 approaching, it will likewise serve as the basis for this humorous reflection / story. Yeah, so earlier in the century, they created a commercial with classical music about pork the other white meat. So pork in children's media. That's all, folks. Before I get into the meat and potatoes of this piece, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the celebration of pork in pop culture. Perhaps the most famous cartoon pig is none other than Porky Pig from Warner Brothers Looney Tunes gang. Porky's iconic ending for the cartoons, featuring the famous cast of characters, came to mind as I was close to preparing this piece for publishing. There's also Miss Piggy from The Muppet Show and the Pigs in Space skit. Piglet was also one of Winnie the Pooh's sidekicks. There was also the popular children's story Charlotte's Web about a pig which was eventually going to be used for a meal and a spider it befriended. Perhaps my most memorable pig caricature didn't come from TV, though. It came on a summer visit to Atlanta, Georgia. My eldest cousin, shout out to my cousin Monica, and an auntie had one of their many legendary dust-ups while a bunch of us stepped out. When we returned to the house, there was a picture of a cartoon pig in a colorful plaid shirt covering up a hole in the drywall. Whatever the conflict was, my cousin unleashed her frustration there. Family. So yeah, my cousin got so frustrated that she literally punched a hole in the wall, and she put this cartoon pig over it. And we all saw it when we came back. Pork in the movies. My God, you killed a fucking pig. In one of my favorite movies of all time, the original Predator movie, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger as Dutch Schaefer, a pig became the topic of discussion. Late at night, while trying to trap the alien predator, hunting them down, a wild boar sprung one of the traps created by Dutch's gradually shrinking elite special missions team. Pancho, played by Richard Chavez, observes that Mac, played by Bill Duke, has bludgeoned and killed a wild boar instead of the alien he has become obsessed with. Breathing heavily, Mac returns an F-bomb to Pancho as Billy, played by Sonny Lanham, bellows out his characteristic laugh. The pig in this movie was more of a supporting character, if you will, but there are also movies where the animal was featured in the title. Two examples are Wild Hogs, starring John Travolta and Ray Liotta. There's also the silly early 1980s film Porky's. We have some tomato sausage and nice crispy bacon. This classic line is from The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring movie. In this iconic scene, the four Hobbit protagonists are camped out at Weathertop. They were in the early stages of the quest to destroy the One Ring. Frodo, played by Elijah Wood, wakes up to see Mary, played by Mary, played by Dominic Monaghan, Pippin, played by Billy Boyd, and Sam, played by Sean Astin, preparing a hearty snack, which unfortunately alerts the Nazgul to their presence. I want to eat some of those hog maws. I want to eat some of those pig feet. This final iconic movie scene that I'll cite comes from Ice Cube's classic comedy Friday. In this early scene in the movie, Craig is in the refrigerator foraging for food. Mr. Jones, played by the late John Witherspoon, finds Craig and mischievously chastises his son for eating up all the food and for losing his job on his day off. Hail to the hogs in hog heaven. This may all sound absurd to you as the reader, but pork has also been celebrated in the sports world. During the former Washington Redskins championship run under head coach Joe Gibbs, their offensive line was nicknamed the Hogs. They were large and imposing and hogged the line of scrimmage to the benefit of their many great running backs. While many people lamented the Native American symbolism, many passionate Redskins fans also wore pig snouts in the stands to show their support for their beloved franchise. Finally, the University of Arkansas at Lafayette's sole national championship on the basketball court was nicknamed Hog Heaven by Sports Illustrated. The school mascot for Coach Nolan Richardson's Arkansas basketball team was the Razorback, which is basically, once again, a wild boar. An average college basketball fan at the time, that was a memorable championship for numerous reasons. One of the biggest was President Bill Clinton, an Arkansas native, and his wife Hillary attending the national championship game. Okay, now I'll get on with the main discussion of this piece, which involves pork as a food. That right there is a box from Lenova Pizzeria in Buffalo, and I'll describe the significance of that right now. But first, I'm going to wet my palate. Once again, guys, if you see something unusual in the chat, feel free to hit the eject button. Okay, hold on a second. Our early diets and proteins. Mom, who cooked for us most of the time, never prepared or served pork to my brother and me when we were growing up. That said, we could have it on occasion, particularly on our pizza on Friday nights. Those Friday nights in Buffalo, which I have fond memories of, were our designated eating out nights where the cuisine was either Burger King, Chinese food, or pizza and wings. For those of you who don't know, one of Buffalo's signature cuisines is pizza and wings. You can get pretty much any of the main, you can get them on pretty much any of the main arteries of the city. My brother and I readily ordered pepperoni on our pizza, and it's still something I order on my pizza these days, along with mushrooms. If you ever go to Buffalo, by the way, you must get the pizza and wings with blue cheese. Any restaurant will do, but some of the bigger pizza restaurants are the Anchor Bar, Bocce's, Lenova's, Leonardi's, and Santora's. You notice most of those are named after Italians. There are also lesser known pizzerias like Avenue Pizza and Just Pizza. You know you got the real thing when the pepperoni slices curl up into little cups with oil pooled in the middle. Seriously. Oh, one more of Buffalo / Western New York. One more Buffalo / Western New York related treat you absolutely must try if you haven't is the Salem's hot dogs, which are made with pork and beef. I have wonderful childhood memories of consuming the long and flavorful hot dogs at church picnics and barbecues. When grilled over coals, the casings develop a signature crunch when you bite into them. Many Buffalonians feed for the Salem's hot dogs when they move away and even order them for consumption in their current homes. So one of my classmates from Johnson C. Smith University, shout out to Dimitri Cowan, told me one time, he said, Scoob, my nickname was Scoob. He said, why didn't you tell me about the Salem's hot dogs? Because, well, they're good and they're world famous. My family had beef more readily when we ate out, but our proteins at home consisted mostly of fish and poultry. Though you might not expect it, Buffalo also has its share of steak shops similar to those found in Philadelphia. The city of brotherly love is known for its cheesesteaks, and we also have them in Buffalo. Let's see. Okay. A porkless diet. Some of you might be wondering how one could grow up not eating pork chops, pork ribs, pork bacon, or souse, but it is entirely possible. For those who don't know what souse is, it's pickled, specially seasoned chopped pork parts, ears, for example, held together in a gel type of substance. If you ever go to Miami, for example, you can get it at most barbecue rib shacks along with rib sandwiches. And by the way, a rib sandwich isn't a sandwich per se. At one of these shacks, I actually asked how you could eat a sandwich with the bones still in the meat, and they looked at me like I was crazy. It's just a portion of ribs served with white bread on the side in a styrofoam container. So one of my exes actually was from South Florida, and she had a rib shack that she liked going to when she went home. And she took me this one time. So just imagine you're driving up, you see this big old barrel um, with a man cooking. He opens it up, smoke goes everywhere, and you hear this chopping noise as he's cutting the ribs. So um, she got the ribs, she got the souse. So that's a pretty big deal depending upon the neighborhood you grow up in. Finally, pork never made it onto our holiday dinner tables. There was no holiday ham, no chitterlings, also known as chitlins. To this day, I've never tried chitlins. My late grandmother made them for the above mentioned anonymous aunt one time. It might have been Thanksgiving. They stunk up the entire hallway, and from childhood on, I was never interested in them. For the older generations, other parts of the pig were popular too, such as pickled pig feet. I was never interested in those either. It's also worth noting that vegetables like collard greens were often made tastier when cooked with pork, but there are other methods today. Okay, so this next section is called Dad's Aversion to Pork. So remember, I said my father's fingerprints are all over this essay and the stream. Well, now I'm going to read to you guys about that. There's no pork in this, right? I had made a pot of jambalaya with chicken and sausage as the featured proteins, one of Emerald Lagasse's succulent recipes. Before scooping out some, Dad saw fit to verify that I wasn't about to poison him with the swine. In Black Muslim circles, pork is referred to as a swine. I knew of Dad's aversion to pork and wouldn't dare think of feeding him the other white meat. No, Dad, there's no pork in it, I said, partially smiling. Knowing of his disdain for pork, I was both surprised, but not surprised to hear his suspicion that I would attempt to feed it to him. I don't recall when Dad became averse to pork and pork products. One of the many books he had laying around his home was How to Eat to Live by the legendary Honorable Elijah Muhammad of the Nation of Islam. I first heard of the book in the song Beef by the rapper KRS-One in my teens, a song that I might still have mostly memorized. In any case, yes, Dad became averse to anything pork related at some point. And if you have read any of my writings up to this point, you know that my dad has told me interesting stories over the years. Several have involved pork. One of my favorites that I first heard when I lived with him in my early 30s, as I was transitioning into my federal science career. Read on to see it for yourself. During that 2.5 year stretch, we got, how shall I say, better acquainted as my parents divorced when I was 3 years old. Okay. Beef chop suey, the breakfast of champions for a little while at least. Dad was a man of routines, especially when it came to his diet. Part of his routine involved getting beef chop suey from one of the local Chinese restaurants. He would have it for breakfast on Friday mornings. In fact, he was so regular that he said they knew what he was going to order whenever he walked in the door. What's up? I'd wake up in the mornings, seeing him bent over his kitchen counter in his undershirt and boxers, eating the protein, vegetables, and rice out of the Tupperware he warmed it up in. He was in a state of euphoria as he gobbled it down. It would be his biggest meal of the day because he ate breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, and dinner like a pauper. Dad's kitchen smelled good on those Friday mornings when he nuked his beef chop suey. Just like the Long John Silver fish planks he ate on Thursday night, it was all like clockwork. Then one day, the beef chop suey abruptly stopped. I think they put pork in my beef chop suey. After I ate it, I could feel little things running across my body. He acted out the sensation, moving his fingers in a piano-like motion from his right side to his left side. He was convinced. It's one of my favorite father-son moments of all time, and it makes me laugh every time I think about it. It was possible, I guess. I also noticed that he would change his routines every now and then just to do something different. So he literally did do that. He did say, I can feel things running across my body like this. And anytime he felt like he ingested pork, he did that. I feel like I could feel things running across my body. There's pork in this. So Alicia says, Flint's is still my favorite. I could smell the smoke now. Okay, so you guys have a rib shack in Flint. I think pretty much every Black neighborhood has a rib shack. So that's probably a universal thing. Extended Clip says, we live near the Shattuck Ave location. Alicia says, I grew up near the East Oakland store by Havens Court. Okay. Almost done here, guys. So Dad's most astounding pork story. Dad's most powerful, let me start that over. Dad's most powerful pork story, though, involved some of our relatives from down south. I never met them because of the divorce. He told me that these people ate pork all of the time, in addition to putting mayonnaise on everything. By the way, mayonnaise, just like cheese, does make most everything taste better, though it is loaded with calories. I think using them together in a meal, on a burger, for example, is considered doubling your fats. My one cousin ate so much pork that he started to look like a hog. This one claim from Dad is forever etched into my mind verbatim. This also makes me laugh every time I think about it. It was like the classmate from South Carolina at Johnson C. Smith University. This individual insisted that he witnessed someone's limb regrow as the person was prayed over during a church service. Like Dad's pork story, I wondered if this classmate was delusional, imagined it, or if the story was true. So my dad said our one cousin ate so much pork that the person literally started to grow a snout and sharp ears. And at my HBCU, this classmate from South Carolina told me that he saw someone get prayed over and he saw a limb grow back. So when people are telling you stories like this, you wonder, are they telling the truth or are they delusional in some way? So, but it's a funny story, and I'll never forget my dad telling me this story about our cousin starting to look like a hog after consuming so much pork. If you're new coming in, please hit the like button. I'm almost done here. So my father continued. His face started to elongate into a snout, and his ears actually became pointy like those of a pig, Dad said with conviction, once again affirming that he saw what he thought he saw. If it sounds like a fantastic story to you, the reader, imagine how I felt listening to it in real time. You are what you eat. In any case, maybe the honorable Elijah Muhammad was right in that you are what you eat. In closing, I've never officially sworn off pork myself. I still like it on my pizza, and there's nothing like the crunch and the taste of pork bacon or a fried pork chop every once in a while. Yeah, especially with rice and collard greens or green beans or a nicely seasoned vegetable. My best friend and my uncle Ice also both prepare very, very tasty barbecue pork ribs, albeit in different ways. The Midwest is in fact known for its barbecue, which includes the aforementioned ribs, but also pulled pork sandwiches. Finally, there's nothing like a sausage McMuffin with egg and cheese from McDonald's, again, every once in a while. Pork is also a popular protein in the cuisines of other countries and ethnicities. Look at pretty much any Asian or Latin American menu, for example, and you'll see several pork based dishes available. As a postdoctoral scientist in a lab with mostly Chinese colleagues, I noticed that pork was a very popular protein at our lab gatherings. I recall a Canadian friend of West Indian descent ordering some jerk pork one night in Toronto, Ontario. Chicago is known for its Polish sausages, which are very, very good. I've also heard individuals from Pennsylvania discuss a Dutch pork dish called scrapple. Finally, there's a stereotypical whole roasted pig with the apple in its mouth at Hawaiian luau's. So the author's post thoughts/reflections. And this is the ending, guys. I won't get mad at you if you decide not to eat it, but don't tell me not to eat it either. If you haven't deduced from this piece, pork consumption can be a big deal depending on your values and the circle you come from. At a church service years ago, a clergyman who I'll call Pastor Gray of the Jordan River Missionary Baptist Church in Buffalo, New York, started passionately preaching about eating pork. It was probably a bit of pushback on the resurgence of the Nation of Islam's doctrines at that time. One of their biggest teachings, of course, involved not eating pork. Those doctrines were re-energized by the conscious hip-hop music of the time in the late 80s and the early 1990s. When he got deep into his sermons, Pastor Gray became very passionate. His high-pitched voice ascended to a bit of a scream or a wail, a hallmark of many Black preachers. His passion would startle you back to consciousness if you happen to doze off for a moment, like I did that day. I told this story here on Big Words Authors partially out of humor. However, it is also a bit of a thought piece. My mother was very vigilant about our diets early on. I'm very grateful for that, as the majority of her dietary habits have stayed with me. We never got sick much, and to this day, I still don't. As we all age, it's important to be mindful of our diets and incorporating more fresh fruits and vegetables. I didn't always understand his eating habits and his eating schedule. That said, Dad's avoidance of pork may be a contributor to a relatively healthy life. Perhaps it is true that you are what you eat. The opening quote of this piece, by the way, comes from the aforementioned song by KRS-One, Beef. All right, guys, that's it. That's my little, that's my pork essay. Of course, this is a little blurb encouraging readers to sign up for the Big Words newsletter. And that's pretty much all I've got. Thank you, Extended Clips, and Alicia and Toya for hanging out in the chat. If anyone, let's see, I'm gonna let this go for 14 more minutes. If anyone wants to come and say a few words, I'll drop the link. If not, I'll finish it up. If you're watching on the playback and you want to make a donation to the channel, let's see, that information is here. Now, as a writer, my mother said that it's always important to read out loud what you've written before you put it out there. Because when you do, then you find things. And as I was reading this, I found some things that I didn't know were there. And this post has been live. This post has been live for about 2 months. So after we get finished here, I have to go back in and fix those things. But Toya, you know, as a grammar snob, that's a part of the writing process. So this one was written for humor. You know, my dad can be a little eccentric at times, and he inspired this. He did actually tell me that he felt he could feel things running across his body, and he did share with me that we did have a relative that started to look like a human pig, which I know that sounds bizarre, but that's true. If you're new coming in, please like the stream. I'm going to let this go for about, I'll let it go for a few more minutes if no one wants to come up. And it's amazing. It is, whether or not you eat pork in the Ados tribe, that is a very, very big deal. I can remember being a young child, and my grandmother used to watch us in the Jasper Parish projects on the west side of Buffalo. And there was a kid who stayed down the street, it wasn't a street, but down the units. His name was Dean Jones. We would play with Dean when my grandmother would watch us. So one day, Dean's grandmother was barbecuing some ribs, and they shared their ribs with me and my brother. And as a young kid, I was thinking, wow, I don't know what this is, but this is good. It's crunchy. It's flavorful. It's succulent. This is really, really good. And then my mother picked us up, and we shared with her, Dean's grandmother made some ribs. And we had some ribs. And my mother, her shoulders kind of slumped over. She says, I don't want you guys eating that. I don't want you guys to eat that food. And it's like, well, why? Well, I don't want you guys eating pork. It's not good for you. So that was one of the foods that growing up that we never had. We never had pork. We never really had Kool-Aid. We never really had collard greens seasoned with pork. Let's see. In my stream with Roger, there was a special cornbread you guys talked about. We didn't really have that. So there were a lot of things that were normally consumed in the Ados tribe that we didn't have because my mother didn't want us to have it. So that was that's my pork piece, guys. I wrote this, you know, as an aspiring writer. I have 2 writers' blogs. Oh, by the way, if any of you guys want to write something, I do take posts on this blogging platform. It takes work to publish up other people's stuff. So If you submit something, a donation is welcome. But as an aspiring writer working on a book, I think it's necessary to get myself out there as a writer, quote unquote. So, there are a number of essays that I've written, and I have others on the way. This one I wrote for humor, to entertain a little bit, because it's a story that, when I think about my father and the stories he's told me over the years, some of his stories are funny. They're very sensational. They're very fantastic. They're very over the top. So he might hit the roof, or he might blow a gasket if he knew that I was using some of his stories for content, but it just is what it is. It just is what it is. So this one was told for humor. My piece on, walking the east side of Buffalo after dark, that one, I wrote that to this one kind of flexed my humor muscles a little bit. That one was written to flex my emotional muscles a little bit. My piece about Black Guru's here. My piece about the Exchange Street Tunnel and riding the train as a kid, that one was to flex my writing muscles in terms of childhood memories. So, Black Guru, what's going on? Hold on a second. Yeah, my speaker's working. Black Uru, go ahead and speak. Okay, he's going to leave and come back in. And then after Black Uru says what he says, I'll wrap up. Okay, let's see if we can hear him now. Black Uru?
You hear me, Doc?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, sorry. For some reason, when I sign on I must sign on to StreamYards at least 2 or 3 times in order for my audio to work. So my daughter has been at me about changing phones. So I guess I should comply with that request. It's funny you mentioned food, and I'm listening to your I'm listening to your descriptions of your parents and or their view about pork, and I think they somewhat, to some degree, mirror those of my parents to some degree, especially my father. It's interesting. I didn't really know my father very well. I can hardly even remember having meals with him very much. But for some reason, I do recall him being quite adverse to pork. And, lived a pretty good while.
Okay.
I mean, my dad was well into his 80s when he passed, which for a black man is a pretty good haul.
Yeah. Now, Black Uru, are you people from down south originally? I know you're.
Yeah. Both of my parents are from the Mississippi Delta, which is sort of a central region of Mississippi. And I myself was born there.
Okay.
So,
yeah, I know that for the elder generations, many have passed on now. Pork was definitely a part. Yeah, it was an integral part of the menu.
I remember my father being somewhat of a, and although he was not, he was at some point hypertensive, especially so. So at some point, fairly young in life, he appeared to somewhat aggressively take more proactive control over his diet and certain other parts of his fitness or whatever. and I think there was a religious aspect to it for whatever reason. He wasn't Islamic, but I think I do recall him having a negative view about pork, and so I think that contributed to his eventual rejection of. And he would also refer to pork as swine, as you
Swine.
often hear, as you often hear uh, uh, followers of Islam, I guess,
Yep.
often refer to pork as swine. So, it's interesting. I grew up, and I too am fairly conscious about what I consume, and I have not consumed very much of swine or pork, I guess, in recent years. Although there are parts of the pig or whatever that are actually, fairly lean and nutritious. Certainly some of your pork loin or whatever are as high in protein and as lean in terms of fat, I guess, as much of the other sorts of uh, uh, animal protein that you may consume. But I too am cautious about. Well, I don't really eat much of any sort of pork. I don't really eat sausage. I don't eat bacon, or I'll eat turkey bacon, I guess. Um, and I think for the most part that has done me well. I'm fairly fit for my age and fairly slim, and my cholesterol levels are pretty decent. So I can, I guess, somewhat relate to what you describe in terms of your familial experience and being somewhat agnostic towards pork,
Mm-hmm.
which often makes for interesting um, familial experiences,
Mm-hmm.
uh, holidays, because very often you have pork in everything.
Mm-hmm.
Not just, obviously in terms of the ribs and even the flavoring and the seasoning of food very often includes a good deal of pork and obviously bacon, sausage, things of that nature. So it often can be somewhat, and it often leads to a certain estrangement from other Black people in certain
Really?
social contexts.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like you say, you got a family reunion, you got ribs everywhere, and, pork chops. And, I mean, those are very often a staple of social gatherings, you know.
Yeah.
So, I often find myself when I am at groups and holidays, although I guess that's been somewhat, minimized by COVID, but at least prior to COVID, you'd often, or I would often find myself having to be somewhat uh, cautious or circumspect about what I consumed. But it's not even just pork. I mean, I'm the type that I pretty much eat all meat with my hands,
Yeah.
which because I basically pick through all of the you know pretty much pick out all of the fat or fatty portions of any sort of meat that I eat, not just well, I don't eat much pork, but if I'm consuming beef or chicken or whatever, I consume as little fat as I can identify.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. My experience, at least in my family, is I know we talk about the generations here a lot. The boomers in my family, it might have something to do with the amount of information and health consciousness and diet consciousness that started to come about in the 80s. But my mom and most of my aunts and uncles, they don't really partake in it. Um, actually, no. My youngest uncle, he fancies himself a barbecue pit master.
Mm.
So so he'll barbecue the ribs and have a good time doing it. But um, some of my other aunts and uncles, they only eat white meat, well, poultry, and or some of them have just gone straight vegan. Uh, but it's tasty. Every now and then, I'll partake in a McDonald's sandwich, and when I go to Buffalo, I'll get some pizza. But I don't cook it, and I don't eat it regularly myself.
It's interesting. Once you, or at least I discovered for myself, once you become conscious about that sort of thing, uh, and maybe it's subconscious or whatever, I don't know, but you develop a sort of revulsion against, like you mentioned, pizza. Uh, as a young person, I definitely enjoy pizza, sausage pizza. Uh, but as I got older, I couldn't eat it anymore without at some point experiencing a gag reflex.
Okay.
I would say about somewhere around 20 years ago, I couldn't I couldn't eat sausage pizza anymore. I can maybe eat pepperoni, but
Hmm.
it's just something about the sausage. I couldn't, like I say, maybe it was psychosomatic or subconscious or whatever. I'm not sure, but at a certain point, I just couldn't eat it anymore.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, Black Uru, thank you for coming up. I just wanted to read this piece and showcase some of my writing here. So thank you for coming up. Did you have any other comments you want to make?
No, not at all. Well, I guess I will say this. Black men in particular,
Hmm.
and I know there's generational separation, so I don't pretend to be able to make any kind of opinion that necessarily crossed the generations. I think some younger black men perhaps are more astute about some of these dietary matters than certainly I might have been. But I do think it's important that we are more conscious. We're more conscious eaters, or more conscious from the standpoint of what we consume, what we intake in terms of our nutritional intake. Um, I don't necessarily think pork is evil per se, but definitely know what you're consuming, know what's actually in it, and make wise decisions accordingly. So I'll end it with that. And thanks for having me, Doc.
Okay, Black Uru, I'll see you on the YouTube streets.
Take care,
Uh,
brother.
all right. Yeah, everyone. This is the first of many streams I'm going to do this weekend. Um, um, Look for me over on my sports channel, my science channel, my original channel. I just wanted to do something over here because I hadn't done anything since me and Kareem reviewed Spider-Man No Way Home. And this year, I want to start to highlight my ratings and also to start to further sell myself and brand myself as a writer. So let's see. Extended Clip says, I haven't had pork of any kind in nearly 20 years. If I smell it or eat it, I would become sick. Okay. Wow. Yeah, I heard. Well, like Uru just mentioned, that once you stop eating something and you develop a level of consciousness regarding it, you can start to um, experience revulsion due to that particular food type. So, all right, everyone. Thank you for those of you who watched. If you're watching in the playback, please like, share, and subscribe. If you want to put something in a tip jar, My Cash App and PayPal are below in the comment section. Everyone be safe out there. Watch where you go, mask up, and those kinds of things. My voice, I lost my voice over the holiday season because I did test positive for it. I talked about that over on my science channel. And I still have a bit of a scratchy, um, still have a bit of a throat thing going on. So everyone be safe out there. So I'll talk to you later. As always, remember that your attitude I'll talk to you later. And as always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. All right. Bye-bye.